presentation today is we're going to work on primarily what's between your ears, because that's what can change in this next hour or so, is the mindset. So what I want you all to do is just to be open to your mind shifting. If you get one of the points from this in your mind and you get it applied, it can transform everything. So I wouldn't go into this trying to just learn it all and take it all in. I would kind of swim in all of it if I were you. I would enjoy it all. I would kind of just bask in all of it. But I would wait for that moment when there's something in your head, something in your brain that just snaps and you say, that's it. And it's likely something you've already thought of before, but it's just a reminder. And so if you'll just keep a little notepad there close to you, when you get that little, what I call BFO, blinding flash of the obvious, that little light bulb that pops off, and just write that down. And then most importantly, what you're going to do about that. If you get one or two of those nuggets out of this next hour, it can transform everything. You could get overwhelmed from all this, but we're trying to teach today against overwhelm, because there's a lot of different ideas and techniques and keys to being productive. But if you get one or two great ideas from this that can change your situation, I think you would say it's been well worth your attendance. So with that said, I'm going to move forward here to our first slide. I want to talk a little bit about my business, just so that you all know who I am and what else I offer. We have these upcoming online events. I'm intending right now to do these for the rest of the year, every month towards the first week of the month. So those, if you're on our list, you'll be getting notifications on that. We have a weekly email article that we send out. Most of you are on that as well. That comes out on Monday. That is free. It's usually around 300 words or less, so you can read it in 2 minutes. It's just a little shot in the arm and uplift and a thought-provoking article for the week. I have currently formed 2 mastermind groups this year that we do in this format. Those are going excellent. Just great. We've got, they consist of 8 individuals that get together and just share a little bit about their week, and then one challenge of the week or one opportunity of the week that they want to put in front of the group. So we go round robin, and every week somebody has a chance to do that. So if you're interested in that, we have currently 3 openings in those mastermind groups, and they seem to go fast. But if you're interested in more information on that, contact me. I obviously do personal mentoring and coaching, group facilitation and training, and there is the information on the bottom. So that's the business advertisement. That is over with, but I really wanted to offer that because I think sometimes people just don't understand, what is it that Dave does. We really appreciate these meetings, but we're not sure. So that's that, and this is about me. Very quickly, married for 35 years. Can say very happy marriage now. Didn't start off that way, but you know, through the grace of God, it is morphed and grown and blessing. Have a wonderful wife that just takes care of everything for me, and we love each other. Beam Business Services, started this business 17 years ago. It was a franchise of an action coach, but now I'm independent on my own. But I've been serving in 17 years in this capacity as a mentor, trainer, speaker. And I'm also the Association of Certified Biblical Counselors. For 20 years, I've been certified as a biblical counselor. I help people in marriage issues and personal issues. Love doing that work. I am the self-proclaimed granddaddy of all granddaddies, which sometimes gets challenged by the grandchildren, which they're certainly allowed to do that. I love to play the piano. My instrument of choice is a Tyros 5. By Yamaha. If you don't know what that is, you're not missing anything this morning. And here's what you do need to know about this morning. I have a passion to help. I have a passion to make a difference. I think for all of us, if we really dig down deep and we really get beneath the surface, we want to make a difference. And I think that's true for everybody. It's down there somewhere. They want to make a difference. That's my goal this morning, is to make a difference for you in the area of productivity, in the area of getting more done, getting better things done. So let's jump into it. I'm going to start with this first key principle called leverage. Maybe some of you have heard the term, you've used the term. In the physical world, leverage is just getting a mechanical advantage. You look at that little picture down there, you got a fulcrum, and by moving that fulcrum to the right place underneath that plank, you can lift a heavy load with a minimal effort. If we're talking about productivity today, it's all about doing more with less, ever more with less. How do I take the resources that I have? Maybe you're looking at this personally. How do I take myself as a personal resource and get more from me? How do I get, as an organization or a team, more from my team? So we need to look at leverage as a key principle for understanding productivity. This other definition that I've been learned in the past is dividing to multiply. If we want to get leveraged in life and in business, we have to really break things down into their component parts and then put them back together. Compound interest works that way as an example of leverage. Using a team of people, dividing the responsibilities and distributing them among other people. So there's this breaking down and dividing of things in order to get a multiplying effect. So that's a great way to, that key of leverage, again, as I talked to you this morning, I just want you to kind of sit and let that soak in a little bit. There are 4 ways to leverage in business. Money is one way. How you use that money, how you invest that money. There is people. This is the one we're going to talk about this morning probably the most. But how do I use and work with other people? Folks, the bottom line is you're a productive person. You're probably a hardworking person. You wouldn't come to a seminar like this if you didn't want to do better. And the fact is, you can't do it all yourself. And I'm going to really encourage you today to think, who else can help me? Who else can I do this with a team? Doing this on my own, you are just not Superman or Superwoman. You are not just the end-all person. I'm not either. How can you leverage yourself using other people? In the world of business, we could talk about marketing, that marketing is the leverage that brings the business in, and certainly systems is getting it out of this head up here and getting it into a system where we have an objective standard. So those are other ways to leverage in business. But we're going to primarily talk about productivity in your work today. Hopefully you've heard of this principle. This is another amazing principle that it's just common sense, common knowledge when you think about it, but people don't ever slow down enough to really think these days. And this is one to really think about. It's the 80-20 rule called the Pareto principle. There's a great book on it. I would suggest that if you have some reading time, it would be a good read for you. What it basically says in essence is that 20% of our effort gives us the 80% of our results. Well, what does that mean? That means if you've got a 5-day work week, that one of those days is absolutely giving you the most result. Now, it might not be this 8 hours here or this 10 hours here. It might be 2 hours out of every day, or it might be 30 minutes out of every day. But if you take your total time for the year, 20% of that time gave you 80% of your results. That's called the Pareto principle. I'm going to give you another thought here on this 80-20 rule. Gonna mute somebody there. I'm going to give you another thought here on that Pareto principle. If you have clients, if you have customers, if you're in a customer service business or any kind of a business that has customers, obviously, You take your total number of customers, 20% of those customers are bringing you 80% of your profit. I challenge you to write that down or go to your QuickBooks or go to your bookkeeping and look at that list of customers. There is this group, 20% of your employees are probably bringing 80% of the value to the business. This 80-20 principle is so important to understand when we're trying to increase productivity, that it's a small amount here that gives us the bigger result over here. It sounds like leverage, doesn't it? It's a leverage principle. And again, I'm just trying to give you the concepts right now at the first of this. We're going to get into some practical ideas here in a minute about what to do. But this 80-20 rule is a critical principle if you want to increase your productivity. The fact is, your not to-do list is more important than your to-do list. Most of you are doing way too much to get things done. Isn't that interesting? Most of your business and your life and your schedule is too crowded to really be productive. It's actually in not doing things that you'll get more productive. It's counterintuitive that you're doing too much to get things done. What is it that you need to quit doing that would increase your productivity? That might be one of those light bulbs that just went on. I want to give everybody a moment, with your pen and paper there to just think, write down, just take a few notes. What are the things that I'm currently doing that are keeping me from doing things that could actually be productive and give me the results I want? And we're going to talk later here about why we do all that junk stuff. Why do we do all that stuff? There's a lot of reasons. 80-20, the Pareto principle, very important, very good leverage principle. Let's go to our next concept. I love distinctions. I love distinctions as a coach, as a mentor, as somebody who trains and helps people, because the human mind is designed to think in duality. That's just the way we're wired. And when you get a distinction, you have it. You don't have to memorize it. You don't have to study it. It just goes on like that in your brain and you have it. When we can get distinctions about productivity that'll help us today, like that, you'll have it. You'll have something that will actually change your productivity, a very quick, bright understanding. So let me give you an example here of some distinctions that are very common that prove the point that we all think in distinctions. Now, if I had you in a room together, we'd all say this out loud together, but we're just going to pretend today. So I'm going to say it for you. But if we look at this first one, black versus white, day versus night, up versus down, fast versus slow, life versus death, left versus right, east versus west, north versus south, right versus wrong. We all think in distinctions. And once you get a distinction, you have it. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to lecture on it. I see this. Now I'm going to give you another word, victim. What's the distinction of victim? You maybe don't know that one. If you've been around me long, you probably know what it is. It's owner. But if you get that distinction, that's a transformational distinction. We're going to talk about that one today. In fact, we're going to talk about 5 distinctions that will help you be more productive. The first one is the owner-victim distinction. In a moment, we're going to take that one on first. The second we're going to look at is one that comes from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a classic book that if you haven't read it, you just need to buy it and read it. Covey talks there. He gives us a little table that we'll display on importance versus urgency. It's a very important distinction for productivity. Third distinction. This is in relationships, serving versus pleasing. Many of you may see those as the same things. I please somebody, I serve somebody. What's the difference? They're actually opposite. But if you don't get the distinction, you don't get the leverage, you don't get the advantage from knowing that. So we're going to talk about that. Delegation versus abdication. Most people think delegation doesn't work real well. most people say it's just easier to do it myself. It's because they're not delegating, they're abdicating. When you know the difference between delegation and abdication, you may have never even heard the term abdication. We're going to talk about what that is. And when you get that distinction, you can start to leverage through working with other people. And finally, the distinction between excellence and perfection. If any of you are perfectionists out there right now, you're a little OCD or maybe a lot OCD, and everything just has to be exactly the way you want it for you to be happy. I've got good news for you today. Your freedom is on the way today if you're open to it. We're going to talk about that, and you're actually going to see that excellence is a higher standard than perfection. Now that will get your brain running at this hour of the morning. So here we go. We're going to look at these 5 distinctions that can change your productivity. Here we go. Let's look at the owner-victim distinction. I'm again going to go down a list here to give you a sense for what this distinction is all about. The first distinction is I own it versus I blame you. In other words, things aren't going so well today. I either own the situation and deal with it, or I blame somebody else. When I own it, I'm the owner. When I blame, I'm the victim. What it means is it's out of my control. It's their fault. They did it. I can't. What can I do about it? That's victim. What can I do about it? If you own it, you take care of it because you own it. That's why rental cars get messed up, because people don't own them. So they just tear them up and they trash them. I'm accountable versus I'm in denial. Denial, they say it's not a river in Egypt. Ha ha, you probably heard that joke. But denial, I tell you what, my friends, that's killing people. They put their head in the sand. They refuse to face the facts of problems. They refuse to look at the situation. They have that nagging sense that something's not right, but they ignore it. That intuition that you've been given in your mind, and you look the other way. You have a little problem, a little aggravation, a little irritation, and you don't address it. You're in denial. Versus I'm accountable. Accountable people are willing to measure things. They're willing to test things. If you're going to be productive, you need to take an honest look at where you are. You don't need to be a victim, you need to be an owner, and owners are accountable. They're not in denial. They're responsible. They don't make excuses. Well, Dave, I've got reasons this isn't working. Let's just use the word COVID. Doesn't that just take away a lot of my responsibility? Folks, if you're hearing me out, that raises your responsibility. It's time for leaders and people that have it together to stand up and respond to this. We need to get creative. We need to be on our game. We need to step up and start to respond to people and to needs and to serve, because that's what an owner does. I own my stewardship. I own what I have to do. I own my responsibility. I don't make an excuse. I don't lay down and just give up and just give all the reasons why it can't work. That's the owner-victim distinction. Hope you're seeing the difference between the two. You're getting it. Like you get night and day and up and down. Owner-victim. Responsible versus excuses. You choose to versus you have to. Here's a Dave Beam statement that I've made with people that they always laugh at. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. If you think you have to do something, that's a lie. Now, you're saying, I have to go to work. I have to get up. Well, there are consequences if you don't do certain things. There are certain things if you don't eat, you don't sleep, and you don't take care of yourself, you get sick. I'm not saying you're consequence free, but you don't have to do anything. You choose to do what you want to do. If you want to be more productive, you can be more productive. You don't have to be, but you can choose to be. This is the owner-victim distinction. It's the most powerful lesson I've ever taught. If you get this one, it'll transform your productivity and your life. This next one, I can versus I can't. In fact, I want you to hear the tone of voice that goes with that. I can do it. I can't. I can't. It's down. Oh, I'm a victim. I can't. Oh, that just won't work. versus I can do that. We can figure this out. We can do this. That's the owner-victim distinction. I get to versus I got to. Oh, I got to lose weight. Oh, I got to go on a diet. Oh, I've got to work harder. Oh, I got to go to my job. Oh, I've got to go see my kids. Oh, I've got to take care of the garbage bill, whatever, or I get to. I got to put gas in my tank. I get to put gas in my tank. I've got to make my bed. I get to make my bed. What is the difference between those two thought processes? One is very productive. One is very unproductive. One energizes you and brings you up. One brings you down. And it is your choice to say, am I going to choose to be an owner, or am I going to just put on the handcuffs and become a victim? Owners say, I get to. They see life as a privilege. They see problems as a puzzle to solve. They see challenges as a way to get better, not bitter. I will do it, or I should. Should is probably the lowest word of all. It's bullshit. I mean, I should do this, I should do that. In fact, here's what I want you to do with your little piece of paper. I want you to write down, nobody's looking over your shoulder. On that piece of paper, write down 2 or 3 things you say you should do. Just write down, I should really do this. I should do this. Just a couple things. Now, as you look at those couple things, that's where you're a victim. You have a victim application. By the way, folks, we're all victims and we're all owners. This is an awareness of the distinction so I can see where I'm a victim and get out of denial and become an owner. That thing that you should be doing, you become a victim to it. You've guilted yourself out. Either do it or don't do it, but take it off the should list. So let's talk about overwhelm. Now, I think that was one of the buzzwords in the marketing of this, that I was going to deal with overwhelm. So here it is. Overwhelm is simply a manifestation of victim thinking. That's all it is. And I'm going to say another thing that will shake your tree a little bit, but your circumstances are not causing your overwhelm. Your job and your company where you work is not creating your overwhelm. And for you moms who have all these kids and you're trying to juggle all this, all those kids are not creating your overwhelm. Oh, it seems like it, for sure. Your employees are not overwhelming you, and neither are your customers, and neither is your situation. What is overwhelming you, folks, is how you're processing all these things. Overwhelm is created between the ears. Here's our guy. That's his thought process. He's a victim to his circumstances. And when we're a victim to our circumstances, we get overwhelmed because we have an unrealistic thought process about what's going on. What do I mean by unrealistic? We're either thinking we can do more than what we can do. We have expectations of other people, which is a total mistake to have expectations of others. You shouldn't expect other people to do anything. You need agreements with other people. When I expect everything to go a certain way, I set myself up for disappointment and overwhelm. You need to get rid of your expectations, and you need to get present with the current situation and out of denial and own it. And the overwhelm will start to diminish. Overwhelm is just an emotion. It's like fear. It's like happiness. It's like emotional responses that are a result of how we're thinking. If you try to change the emotion, that's like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. You need to go back and understand what is the thinking that's causing me to feel and respond this way and act this way. Because I can work on my thoughts and I can work on my actions. I can't always change my emotions. My emotions are just an indicator. They're a red light on the dashboard that says there's something under the hood causing this to go off. And overwhelm is a red light on the dashboard. I need to slow everything down and see what am I, not what's going on first, but what am I thinking about what's going on that's causing me to feel overwhelmed. This is where coaching really comes in and mentoring comes in, is you get an outside party to sit down with you and to understand your situation from an objective versus a subjective standpoint, you can start to get rid of overwhelm. Because when you're overwhelmed and you're feeling overwhelmed and thinking overwhelmed, you are truly a victim. You are handcuffed and you're not going to be productive. So how do we deal with overwhelm? Well, we've got to deal with the head trash. We got to take out the head trash. And it's a story I'm telling myself about my circumstances that are bogging me down. And folks, I know there's a real world out there with a lot of problems and a lot of issues. I'm not in denial about that. But when you get overwhelmed about it, and when you get a story about it that you can't handle it, and you give up your mental toughness, you become a victim and you start to lay down and you can't handle it. So I'm saying it's a mental battle first. Let's talk about Stephen Covey's concept of the 4 quadrants. So we have 4 quadrants on this. This distinction on importance and urgency is so important. Urgency means it's something that is demanding your time and your attention right now. I always like to use, as granddaddy of all granddaddies, the dirty diaper. The dirty diaper, not only we see it, but we smell it. It says this needs to be taken care of now. The ringing phone, the barking dog, the thing, the pesky salesperson, the needy employee. These are all examples of urgency that may or may not be important. Important things are things that are tied to our values. Important things are the things that create that true productivity. Important things are the things that actually get something accomplished. Now on this chart down here, you have 4 categories. You have a category of things that are urgent and important. That's our life, folks. That's the stuff we need to do today, and it's important. That's probably 60–70% of your day. If you're working productively, you're working on urgent, important matters. There are 2 other areas that rob from important matters. These are non-important things. They're in the bottom 2 squares. Urgent, non-important matters. These are things that deceive us. They tell us that they're important by being urgent, but when we really take a closer look at them, they're not important at all. What do I mean by not important? They're not going to help us reach our goal. They're not going to help us produce something we want to produce. They are truly a distraction. They are something that's pulling us away from the path that we've chosen to walk. Path I've chosen to walk, Dave? Well, that's an important thing to do, to choose a path to walk on. But once you choose a destination and you get focused on where you want to go, urgent, non-important things try to pull you off that path. And then there's the time wasters. The non-urgent, not important, watching the 6th round of Fox News. Now, I'm a Fox News fan if I watch the news, but you know what? Watching 6 times the same terrible commercials along with the same news headlines 6 times in a row is a non-urgent, not important. That is the box of escape. That is where we go and actually go backwards in our productivity, trying to get away from things. It is a victim box. It is where I give in to my tiredness and my own mental anguish, and I try to get away and avoid and go into denial and turn things off. It's not energizing. Now, believe me, a great vacation and a great good night's sleep is not laziness. That's not slothfulness. That's healthy. That's good. That's chosen rest. Chosen rest is not the same as not urgent, not important stuff. This is stuff that wastes our times and drags us down. When we finally stand up or get away from it, we just regret it and we feel down. So if you see the box, we haven't talked about that green box, the non-urgent, important matters. Folks, this is your moment of truth right here. This is your moment where you can learn something. I want to help you identify some non-urgent, important things. And here's the way we're going to do that. What is truly most important in your life? What is truly most important in your life? For me, it is my Lord and my Savior. And so I say that because it people say, well, what's most important to you, Dave? It's my relationship with God. So how does that show up in my productivity? That shows up in my schedule in the morning. I read the scriptures, I pray, I make that the priority of the day. Is that urgent? No. There's nobody really yelling and screaming at me to go do that. Another example of something like that would be physical exercise. I also do that almost every morning. I'm walking on the elliptical trainer for 30 minutes. If I got somebody yelling and nagging and screaming at me to do that, no. There's no urgency to that. I have deemed that something that's important that is not urgent. Here's the real magic about this lesson. If you can determine what's in your life right now that is urgent, not urgent, but important, those are the things that if you'll start to focus on them, your productivity will go through the roof. Because productivity is about reaching goals. Productivity is getting done what I want to get done. Well, if you're doing important, non-urgent things, that's where you're clarifying what those things are. That's where you're planning what you're going to do. That's where you're putting boundaries up and making decisions and commitments. That's in that non-urgent, important box. That is the magic box of productivity. It's working on those things so that when you're in the whirlwind of the day, which is the urgent, important stuff, you're able to work energetically and you know you're on a track where with all this energy and activity, you're moving the right direction. Covey says it this way: you can be going up and down that ladder, but is it on the right wall? Am I climbing the ladder? I might be working hard and climbing that ladder, but am I on the right path? And you're not going to know if you're on the right path if you're not spending time in that green box. Again, what I help people with is to slow down their life and to think about what's really important to them. What are their true values? And is their schedule and are their boundaries and their decisions and their commitments in line with those values? That's called integrity, being whole, being integrated. This is what productivity is all about. Let me move on to our next concept, the jar. This is another illustration of those 4 quadrants. And I like this one because it's really simple to understand. It's a great analogy. We've got 4 items that we're going to put in the jar. And maybe you've heard this. We've got some rocks. That's the lower left-hand corner there with the hammer. We've got some rocks. And so we're going to throw some rocks in the jar. And then we're going to take some of that gravel on the right-hand lower side, and we're going to shake that around those rocks and fill that gravel up to the top. And we're going to say, wow, the jar is full. My day is full. I can't fit another thing into it. But that's not true. We can put some sand in there, and then we can shake that sand down, and we can work on that. And that's going to come all the way up to the top. And then after that happens, we've got a jar that's full of rocks and gravel and sand. Is there any more room in that jar? There is some room. We can take some water and we can let it percolate and fill that jar. And now we've got a jar that's full of sand, rocks, gravel, and water. Now, if you take that jar out and you pour it into a big pan, all that material, and you want to put all that material, that's all your stuff you got to do all day long, back into that jar. That's 1 day of time. That jar represents 1 day of time. How are you going to get all that back into that jar? Well, there's only one way you can get all that stuff back into that jar. You have to put the big rocks in first. Here's one of those blinding flash of the obvious moments. If you want to be super productive, if you really want to reach your goals, if you really want to get things done, you need to put the big rocks in the jar first. What that means is, folks, there are only a few things in life that truly matter. And those need to go into your schedule first. They need to be prioritized. I mentioned earlier about my marriage with my wife. Saturday is our big rock day. That's when we set aside time for ourselves. The rest of the week can go how it goes, but that priority goes in that jar. Maybe it's meeting with your team members. Maybe it's really going and helping somebody out. Maybe it's the personal exercise and taking care of yourself. But those important, non-urgent things need to go in that jar first. And I'm telling you right now that your productivity is not where it needs to be or where you want it to be because you're not prioritizing those rocks. You're not setting 90-day goals where you're saying this 90 days, these 3 things are the most important. Not these 30 things. Not these huge long goal lists don't work. You need to focus on 2 or 3 most important things and absolutely commit to those and make sure that those are happening. That is the jar. That's what that represents. All right, I'm going to make a shift here now. We're going to move to a new distinction and a new concept that is a concept that will liberate you from the distraction of other people's needs and priorities. And this is going to be a little hard for some of you to take, but I'm telling you, it's one of those distinctions like north, south, up, down, left, right, owner, victim. If you get this, your productivity will soar, because I'm going to prove the point right now. You know what's in the way right now of your productivity? Interruptions. Interruptions. Now, some of us are in a business where we serve other people and they're allowed to interrupt us, and it's appropriate. If I'm in the EMS business where I run an ambulance, it's not like I can plan my day. I'm working in a business that works in emergency, and some of us serve in those roles where we can't plan our day. Things just happen. And that's absolutely urgent and important things happen. But how often are things happening to us and going on that really don't need to go on? This is this distinction. Am I serving people or am I trying to please people? What is the distinction? Pleasing people, the goal of pleasing somebody is to make them happy. Bad goal. Hey, that's good customer service, isn't it? Bad goal. You can't control other people's happiness. You can't control their response and their reaction. Some people you do this for and they're happy as a lark. Other people you do the same thing for and they're madder than a wet hen. I can't control other people's reactions and responses. Quit trying to control other people and quit linking your happiness to their happiness. Boy, that's a strong statement. Let me give you the serving paradigm versus the pleasing paradigm. The owner, I own my happiness and I choose, I don't have to, I choose to serve others. I choose to give. If they appreciate it, that's a bonus. But that isn't what drives my serving. I serve other people and give to other people because it's the right thing to do. It's my responsibility. It's my accountability to serve the best I can serve, regardless of the response. Me being the best I can be and doing the best job I can do is what matters, not how other people react and respond to it. Oh, I think I need to be aware of how they're responding. Now, if I'm making a lot of people mad and upset, maybe I need to take an honest look at what I'm doing that I think is service. I mean, that feedback gives us a sense about whether we're serving. But at the end of the day, when I go to bed at night and put my head on the pillow, I don't think I should be asking, was everybody happy with me today? What I need to know is, did I do my best? Did I work from a place of service and not a place of fear? Pleasing is a place of fear. I'm afraid people won't like me. I'm afraid they won't accept me. Now, how does this all enter into productivity? Well, I'm going to put these words up here and we're going to talk about this. Effective leaders serve, weak leaders try to please. It enters into the open door policy. Now, I've dealt with this one for 17 years of coaching. Well, Dave, I pride myself, and then I've got an open door policy. Anybody can talk to me anytime. And I'll tell you right now, they're going to have, if they've got anything to do in life, they're very, very overwhelmed and they're busy because they just allow anybody to interrupt them any time of the day. That's the ultimate open door policy. My door is always open. I think it's a terrible policy. You need to learn how to shut your door. You need to learn how to isolate to work on the important, not urgent matters in your life and in your business. The 20% that's going to get the 80% result. You need to learn how to say no in a kind way, in a loving way, in a serving way, but not a pleasing way. Some people won't be happy when you put fences and boundaries up. Some people won't like that. If I'm a pleaser, I won't do it. If I'm a server, I will do it, because I know to be the best server I can be, to give the best service, I need some time to plug in and energize and organize and focus and be the best I can be. I need to increase, in Covey's words, my production capacity before I can produce the golden goose. We don't want to kill the golden goose. Same for your team, folks. They need some time to re-energize. They need some time to rest. They need some time to get it back together so they can produce more. When we just try to milk production out of ourselves and other people with no time to sharpen the saw, no time to recover, then we're in la-la land. But if we're nice versus kind, we'll give people permission to run over us. We'll give people permission to interrupt us. And here's a very interesting statistic that I've read. If you're working on a project, if you're interrupted versus focused, where you're not interrupted, it takes you 3 times longer to do a project overall when you're interrupted than versus when you're focused. If you want to triple your productivity, the projects that don't need to be interrupted, you need to put them in a safe place where a box is, where you're not interrupted. But if you're a pleaser and not a server, you won't put up those fences and those boundaries. Folks, how does that work? Well, the last point on there is we need to use permission and positioning. The magic to effective candor. In other words, this is clear, straight speech to people. It could be very offensive. It could be very perceived as very egotistical and arrogant. Well, you can't reach me. I'm unavailable always. I'm special. I'm super. I'm isolated over here. You can't be in my presence. That's crap. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, I want to serve you better. So instead of you interrupting me, I want to set aside some special time for you where I can give you my full focus. I want to put my full focus on my projects and my full focus on my customers and my people. How do you do that? You set up the boundaries and you own it. This is the magic. And you get permission from people and you position that that's what you're doing. George knocks on your office. He wants something right now. George, first of all, you look up and you get away from your computer and your phone and you look up and you look at George and you really get present with him and you say, George, I really want to hear what you have to say. Is this an emergency? Well, not really. Can we set aside a special time to talk about this? How much time would you need from me? Maybe 20 minutes. Let's set 20 minutes on the calendar and I'm going to give you that to you. That is permission and positioning. That's the magic. But you have to be bold and you have to be a leader and you have to be empowered to do that. You have to be an owner versus a victim. Hope you're seeing how this works. Let's look at our next concept. Now we're getting down into the nitty gritty. Best practices for meetings. Let's do this as a server and not a pleaser. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to begin and end on time. Just like today, at 9:30, this is over. It started at 8:30. It's going to be over at 9:30. You can count on that in my events. They will start and end on time. That's your meetings with people. That's everything you do. It's just common sense. It's a best practice. You need to create a written agenda. I wouldn't go to a meeting without a written agenda unless the meeting is just for getting together and brainstorming and having some fun. You got to define the purpose of the meeting and have an agenda. You've got to facilitate a full participation. The people that need to be there need to be there. They need to be there undistracted. That means put the phone in the box if we need to. That means turn the devices off if we need to. You need to be fully present and participating. No electronic devices facilitates that. And at the end of the meeting, for it to be a productive, we're talking about productiveness today, productive meeting, clear agreements, clear accountabilities, and clear specific next actions that people are committing to. If we don't walk out of a meeting with those, it's really, in my view, a failure, unless the purpose was just to get together and enjoy each other and beat around some ideas. There's nothing wrong with that. If you get at the beginning of the meeting and say, that's all we're going to do today. So we just want to be with each other and kind of brainstorm. That's fine. How do you define the success of the meeting? I think if you're having all kinds of meetings like that and you're not getting anything done, you're in some kind of denial. You need to get a coach in there to shake the tree. But that is what I want to see at the end of a meeting. Clear agreements, clear accountabilities, and next action steps. Here's another tip on how to make interaction with other people leveraged and more productive. You need to use the best communication tool for the situation. Frankly, I don't want your 3-page text. I don't know how you guys are, but I groan when I get a 3-page text. In other words, if it takes up more than one phone screen, I'm kind of groaning inside. I really don't want a novel for an email. I think a phone call is much better. You can get on there, get a clear communication quicker, and get off. Now, everybody's situation is going to be a little different here. I'm just giving you some things to think about. But texting and emailing, I think, should be brief. I think they should be to the point, and I think they should be logistical. In other words, they're explaining or they're giving out objective information. And in fact, small bits of objective information actually can come across in a text and email better than a phone call. Phone calls can get social. Phone calls can get bogged down. Team meetings are last resorts. Now, I think if you schedule your team meeting once a week, maybe twice a week, and you've got an agenda and you've got a purpose and you've got a structure, that's awesome. But if we can handle most of our activity in the office around that team meeting, most of it, and then do some logistical communication through text and email, and then a phone call, folks, then we're working the rest of the time on projects and taking care of customers. I've seen productivity triple, quadruple by installing regular agendized team meetings. The face-to-face conversation ought to be reserved for special things that are important things, but that's where the relationships really grow. And if you're a leader and you have key people that report to you or are with you, you need to be having some face-to-face conversation where you're just being with that person, appreciating that person, celebrating that person, understanding that person. That's that important non-urgent work that will leverage and make your situation much more productive. But it's the thing that people put off, it's the things that they don't do, and it's the thing that they're afraid of because they maybe don't really want to know the truth. They really don't want to know the person's heart. I'm saying, folks, use the best communication tool for the situation. If you're not being as productive as you like, you need to do a little bit of a communication tool assessment and see if you need to change the tool. Trying to drive a screw into the wall with a hammer is not nearly as good as using a screwdriver. And I've never seen a screwdriver that works as a hammer very well. Let's pick out the right tool. Technology, you knew I'd get to it. Do you like my little pictures? I love my PowerPoint pictures. Handcuffs. Here's the question I have for you. This is one of those teachable moments today. Is the technology in your life, I'm going to talk about your smartphone because that's probably the one we're all most familiar with. Is it your master or is it your servant? Does it tell you what to do or do you tell it what to do? Do you control it or does it control you? That is one of those questions you need to really think about. And at the point you feel addicted to your phone and to technology, it has become your master. and you're not going to be very productive when you're a victim to your technology. However, there are some of the older generation, which I would put myself there, that avoid technology because of some of those issues. They're not being able to leverage themselves through technology. If we learn how to use the tool well, technology, it's a lot better to use a tractor than a oxen and a plow. If we learn how to use the technology, it can be our friend and it can be our servant. We just need to learn how to control it and use it. We need to learn how to turn off things and turn on things. So here's a couple of words on that. Email ideas. Reduce the number and time spent with each one. That's a key. In other words, you want to minimize your email, the number of emails and the time that you spend with each email. You want to put boundaries on your smartphone and laptop. In other words, you don't want a 24/7 relationship with them. Communication agreements. Again, we need to position our key people on how we're going to use technology. And those little notifications on your devices, the buzzes, beeps, and twirls and sounds that go off, mainly auditory things, but sometimes visual things. Every time you're distracted, you're ruining your productivity. Turn most of your notifications, if not all of them, off. And you can control those things. That's if you're going to be the master and not the servant. So those are just some practical ideas. There's whole other books on this. There's other sections of books on this. If you want more information on that, email me and I'll send you some suggested reading on that. See the little guy there on the vine swinging? We're going to talk about delegation and abdication here in the last few minutes. You need to let go of the vine, folks. You need to quit being a control freak and trying to do everything yourself. If you want to truly get productive, you need to learn how to delegate. Fear, control issues, fear of mistakes, perfectionism is what causes this problem, this lack of delegation. What do I delegate, Dave? I'm ready. What is least fun for you and doesn't take your level of skill is where you start. And you need to know how to delegate. It's one of the lessons I teach. It's one of the sections I teach when I'm working with folks. How do we delegate? I love this little stool. This will help you a lot. This is the stool of excellence. Not the school of excellence, the stool of excellence. It's a three-legged stool. I had a person that years ago taught me this. There's three things that go into an excellent result. The quality, that's obvious. Something that's excellent has to be high quality. The time that it takes, we can't take too much time. We have to take an appropriate amount of time. And the cost. So if you look at those three dynamics, for that stool to be useful, those have to be equal and level. So the bottom line is, if you go buy something from Walmart, they're going to tell you that they're the lowest cost. I'm going to tell you that there's going to be some loss of quality, maybe in the service, and some lack of efficiency in the time. If you want a project that is done very quickly and very low cost, the quality will be reduced. That if you want excellence in terms of the highest quality, it's going to take a certain level of cost and time to keep that stool level. That's a little picture that I want you to take with you and really think about. So here's my point, the distinction of perfection versus excellence. Excellence has the appropriate amount of time, cost, and quality to produce the level that you want. When people try to be perfect, they never get done. They're never satisfied. They never delegate. And they're striving for something that's almost unachievable. And the cost and the time to do it isn't worth that little extra 1 or 2% of quality. So that little lesson right there, just that picture will really stimulate your thinking and help you. I'm not going to go through how to delegate a task. I'm going to end today with a little story on procrastination, because this little meeting together wouldn't be complete without a story about procrastination. It comes from my book, Feeding the Ducks, and it's about a meeting where I met with Susan. Susan met with me and said, Dave, basically, I said, what's going on, Susan? Free meeting. We were just having coffee, and I said, what's going on? She said, I'm a procrastinator. My mom was a procrastinator. My grandma was a procrastinator. She said, I don't think you can help me. And I said, well, I can, Susan, because I have this magic wand, and I held up my ink pen. And I said, I'm going to wave it over your head. You're going to be free of procrastination. And she said, she teared up a little bit. She said, you're not taking me seriously, Dave. I'm about to lose my house. I flip houses for a living, and I'm a realtor, and I haven't been doing my work lately. I've been putting it off and procrastinating. I'm about to get evicted, and you're talking about magic wands. And I said, well, I need to explain myself, Susan. The fact is, there's only one cure for the illness of procrastination. Do you know what it is? And she thought, well, maybe I need psychoanalysis or months of coaching, or I don't know what I need to do, Dave. Maybe I need a new system, a new time management, a new calendar. I said, no, that none of that is the ultimate answer. There's one answer to procrastination. You all probably know what it is if you slow down and think about it. She just had to get up and do the work. Get up and do the work. And so we talked for a while about procrastination is not real, Susan. It's a story in your head of victimhood. But I can't. And I said, if you will get rid of that story and really not have to overthink it, not beat yourself up, and don't think you've got this deep genetic issue because your mom and your grandma and all that, and just get up and go do the work, I said, you can turn this around. She called me 2 weeks later. She saved her house and saved her business because she got up and just went to work. And I think it was my magic wand. I actually think it was just a meeting like this where she had that moment of clarity and she saw it. Here's a great question. You're not being productive somewhere just because you're not doing it. And it's just that simple. You're just putting it off. Well, I'm afraid, Dave. Best way I know to overcome fear is jump in and do it. You might mess it all up, but don't be afraid of mistakes. Don't be a perfectionist. Determine that you want to learn something and get to work. So that's what we have. I want you to take a moment here before the day is out and take 5 great ideas or actions from your notes today, and 5 great ideas that you're going to put into action, and then choose one of those and commit to it. And this will have been worth your hour this morning. And that's what I have for you today. If you all have questions or want more information from me, you know how to get a hold of me. We've had a great group this morning, and I appreciate your time and your attention. So Lisa, do you have anything to say before we end here? Have anything that you want to say to everybody? I'm going to assume not, because I'm not hearing you right now. So with that, folks, I'm going to say goodbye. Again, you have contact information. Love to hear from you. We'll talk to you next month, hopefully, on our next one. Haven't picked out the topic yet, but I'm working on it. So we'll see you next month, hopefully. Bye-bye.
Thank you.